Inside the White House's pristine walls, where power isn't just wielded but worshipped, a culinary insurrection was brewing. How deliciously ironic that in an administration obsessed with projecting strength, it was a chef who delivered its most uncomfortable lesson in genuine backbone. Karoline Leavitt, White House spokesperson, stalked the West Wing corridors in a crimson dress that matched both her ambition and the blood pressure of staffers who crossed her. Tonight's dinner with Japanese and German diplomats wasn't just a meal. It was a geopolitical performance, where even the silverware placement constituted foreign policy. Leavitt's perfectly manicured finger tapped her desk with metronomic precision. Foie gras, she announced to her cowering team, voice dripping with the practiced certainty of someone who'd spent years converting political necessity into PR triumphs. The centerpiece that proves America doesn't just lead with military might, but with sophisticated taste. How utterly Washington, believing international relations hinge on force-fed goose liver. Meanwhile, beneath the corridors of power, in kitchens where actual work happens, Marcus Elwood, head chef burdened with that most inconvenient of Washington accessories, a conscience, had just dropped the culinary equivalent of a resignation letter on the administration's desk. "I won't serve foie gras," he informed his stunned staff, voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "I've seen the farms. I've watched geese force-fed through metal tubes until their livers swell to 10 times their normal size." The kitchen fell silent. Principles in Washington? How quaintly out of fashion. Ever stood your ground when bending would be infinitely easier? Drop a comment below about a time you refused to compromise your values despite the consequences. And subscribe for more stories about those rare moments when principles collide with power in American politics. Aidan Walsh, Leavitt's aide who'd mastered the Washington art of carrying bad news with the proper mixture of terror and apology, delivered the chef's refusal. "Ma'am, there's an issue. Chef Elwood refuses to make foie gras." His voice trembled appropriately. The correct response when telling Karoline Leavitt she couldn't have exactly what she wanted. "He refuses?" Leavitt's voice dropped to that dangerous register that made Washington insiders instinctively reach for their resignation templates. "I'm hosting world leaders, not a vegan potluck." Her heels struck the marble floor like artillery fire as she marched toward the kitchen, Aidan scurrying behind like a remora trailing a shark. The kitchen doors swung open with theatrical force. Leavitt stood framed in the doorway, her red dress a visual proclamation of authority that would make dictators take notes. The kitchen staff froze. Lena Martinez, the sous chef, Terrence Brooks, the eager young line cook, and Carl, the veteran chef whose skepticism had been perfected over decades of White House service, much like the nation's debt ceiling. "Marcus Elwood," Leavitt pronounced each syllable like a prosecutor naming a defendant. "I understand you disagree with my menu. I want to hear why. And I want to hear it now." The temperature seemed to drop several degrees, as though even the kitchen's heat recognized higher authority. Marcus wiped his hands deliberately on his apron, a simple gesture that nonetheless conveyed he wouldn't be rushed or intimidated, a rarity in a city where careers end over misplaced commas in press releases. "Miss Leavitt, I cannot serve foie gras. It's produced by force-feeding geese and ducks, a process that's painful and cruel. I've seen it firsthand, and I won't be part of it, no matter who's coming to dinner." Leavitt tilted her head, her smile thin but her eyes flashing with controlled fury. "Cruel? You're standing in a kitchen serving world leaders, and you want to debate how geese are raised? This is the White House, Marcus, not an animal rights forum. I need a dish that stuns them, and foie gras is non-negotiable." Washington in microcosm, when facts contradict preferences, facts become negotiable. Who do you side with in this standoff? Marcus standing on principle, or Leavitt prioritizing political optics? Hit like if you admire Marcus's courage, and comment with your thoughts on whether principles have any place left in American politics. Marcus stood firm, his gaze unwavering. "I understand the stakes of this dinner, but I have limits. I visited a farm in France, saw geese caged so tightly they couldn't move, metal tubes shoved down their throats to force-feed them. They could barely breathe." His voice remained steady, a remarkable feat under Leavitt's glacial stare. "But I can offer Wagyu beef from a sustainable Montana ranch, tender as butter, bursting with flavor. Or Atlantic scallops, seared with a golden crust. These dishes will be unforgettable." Leavitt advanced, her voice dripping with sarcasm sharper than the kitchen's finest knife. "Wagyu? Scallops? You think I'm hosting this dinner to serve coastal bistro fare? These leaders expect opulence, not the menu of a self-righteous chef." "I'm not being self-righteous, Miss Leavitt," Marcus replied. "I'm doing what's right. The dishes I'm suggesting aren't just delicious. They tell a story of an America that leads in quality and responsibility. Imagine that, suggesting America could lead through example rather than excess. In Washington terms, that's practically sedition. The kitchen staff watched this clash of wills with varying reactions. Lena, the sous chef, bit her lip, caught between admiration for Marcus and fear of consequences. The eternal dilemma of mid-level staffers everywhere. Terrence, young and idealistic, stared wide-eyed, unable to believe anyone would challenge Leavitt so boldly. Carl, the veteran, shook his head, muttering about idealists who didn't understand how Washington worked, as though moral compromise were listed in the employee handbook. Leavitt's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. "Fine, Marcus, I'll give you one chance, but if I come back and you still don't deliver, I'll make sure you're out of this kitchen." She turned away, her red dress sweeping like flames, Aiden hurrying after her, like the afterthought most staffers become in the wake of ambition. As the kitchen door swung shut, a heavy silence descended until Carl broke it. "Who do you think you are, some knight crusading for geese? We work for the White House, not a charity. You just put the whole team at risk for your so-called principles." He slammed his hand on the counter. "Leavitt doesn't play games. If this dinner flops, you're not the only one out of a job." How perfectly Washington, defending the status quo while claiming it's for everyone's protection. What would you do if you were part of this kitchen team? Stand with Marcus on principle? Or follow Leavitt's orders for job security? This isn't just about cooking, it's about the choices we all face between convenience and conviction. Comment below with what you'd choose and why. Marcus paused, setting his knife down. "I get that you're worried, Carl, but I'm not doing this to cause trouble. I'm doing it because I believe we can create an incredible dinner without causing harm." His voice lowered, each word weighted with sincerity. "We have Wagyu, scallops, dishes that tell a story of American quality. Don't you want to do something worth being proud of?" Carl snorted. "Proud? I want to keep this job, Marcus. I've got a family, bills to pay. You're young. You can take risks. I can't." The eternal Washington calculation. Weighing moral courage against mortgage payments. Lena stepped closer, her voice quiet but firm. "Carl's partly right, Marcus. Leavitt's not one to forget. But I'm with you. It's just, I'm scared this will go too far. My family lost land because of decisions from people up top. I know the kind of pressure someone like her can bring." Marcus looked at his team, his expression softening. "I know, and I don't want anyone to pay a price. But if we give in, we lose what makes us different." Aiden returned, his eyes more anxious than before. "Marcus, I just talked to Miss Leavitt. She's not happy. She said if you don't change your mind, she's considering replacing the entire kitchen team. She wants me to report everything you do." Carl spun around. "See? I told you you're dragging us all down." The classic Washington response to whistleblowers and dissenters: blame them for the consequences of standing up, not the system for punishing integrity. In this moment of crisis, Marcus took a deep breath. "Aiden, thanks for the heads up, but I'm not changing. We'll do the Wagyu and scallops, and they'll leave the guests in awe. Carl, if you don't want in, I respect that, but I need this team united." To everyone's surprise, Lena nodded. "I'm with you, Marcus." Terrence shrugged, his smile brightening. "Yeah, I'm in too. Scallops beat foie gras any day, right?" Even Carl, still grumbling, softened slightly. The kitchen united behind its principled chef, a rare sight in Washington, where compromise usually trumps conviction. Take note, America. Sometimes leadership isn't about having the most power. It's about having the clearest vision of what matters. As the dinner hour approached, Marcus moved between stations with precision and passion, his eyes lit like an artist before a grand canvas. Each slice of Wagyu, every scallop, represented a chance to prove his principles weren't obstacles, but strengths. The fragile harmony shattered when Leavitt returned, her presence commanding immediate attention like a presidential tweet. "Marcus Elwood, I've given you time. Now I need your final answer. Are you still refusing to make foie gras, or do I need to find someone else to get the job done?" Marcus wiped his hands and stepped forward, his resolve undiminished. "Miss Leavitt, I'm not changing my stance. Foie gras doesn't belong on this table. Not because I want to defy you, but because I believe we can do better." Leavitt raised an eyebrow, her voice icy. "You speak well, Marcus, but I don't need poetry. I need assurance that Japan's and Germany's leaders leave here in awe. You think some scallops and beef can match foie gras? Give me a reason not to fire you right now." Marcus described the Wagyu and scallops with such passionate detail that even Leavitt seemed drawn in. Her fingers lightly brushed the Wagyu, her gaze wavering between doubt and intrigue. "You talk like it's magic, Marcus, but what if the guests don't agree? If they leave thinking we cheaped out without foie gras, who takes the fall?" "I'll take the fall, Miss Leavitt. If these dishes don't wow them, you can fire me, but I know they'll succeed." After a tense moment, Leavitt nodded slowly. "All right, Marcus, I'll give you this shot. But if your Wagyu or scallops don't deliver as promised, I'll make sure you're out of this kitchen, and your team with you." The stakes couldn't be higher. A White House chef betting his career, and his team's, on his principles. This is the kind of moral gambling rarely seen in Washington's calculated corridors. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that standing on principle isn't just idealism. It's the only way to create lasting change in a system designed to reward conformity. In the opulent dining room, bathed in the soft golden glow of crystal chandeliers that have witnessed decades of diplomatic theater, the Japanese and German leaders conversed with polite smiles masking strategic calculations. Leavitt moved among them, her composure masterful, but a flicker of unease evident to those who knew where to look. The first course arrived, scallops seared to golden perfection, garnished with shimmering citrus zest. The silver-haired Japanese diplomat cautiously tasted the first bite. His eyes widened. "Exquisite," he said, his voice tinged with surprise. The crisp crust, the natural sweetness, and that subtle tang. So refined. His German counterpart nodded enthusiastically. "This is an outstanding starter. I've never tasted anything like it." Leavitt, standing nearby, overheard the praise, her expression carefully controlled but her eyes flicking toward the kitchen door like a politician checking poll numbers. The main course followed, Wagyu beef, each slice thinly cut, nestled in glossy red wine sauce, garnished with fresh rosemary. Its rich aroma halted conversations as guests locked eyes on their plates. The German leader, after his first bite, set his fork down, looking at Leavitt with undisguised admiration. "The meat melts in your mouth like it was raised by magic. I need to know where this ranch is." The Japanese diplomat nodded in agreement. "This isn't just food, it's a story. I hear it's from Montana? Sustainable and natural. Truly impressive." Leavitt smiled, genuinely this time, victory flooding her expression. "How Washington? Taking credit for the success you initially opposed. Have you ever taken a stand for your principles and been proven right?" Share your personal victory story in the comments below. We need more examples of integrity triumphing in a system designed to crush it. In the kitchen, the teams celebrated as feedback reached them. Terrence whooped, raising a fist. "They love the scallops and the Wagyu!" Lena beamed, hugging Marcus. "You did it!" "They're raving about the food." Even Carl cracked a genuine smile, clapping Marcus's shoulder. "I was wrong, kid. You were right to stick to your guns." Leavitt slipped into the kitchen during a lull, as guests savored dessert. The team froze, awaiting judgment like Supreme Court nominees. She stopped before Marcus, her gaze no longer icy but carrying a rare warmth. "Marcus," she said, her voice low but sincere, "I doubted you, but those dishes, they exceeded expectations. The guests aren't just satisfied, they're enchanted. You did what I didn't think possible." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the team. "All of you, I owe you a thank you." Marcus bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Miss Leavitt. I just wanted to prove we could create something great without losing our values." Leavitt nodded, the corner of her mouth lifting. "I learned that from you. From now on, I'll listen to the kitchen more." She turned to the others. "You're assets to the White House. Keep it up." After she left, the kitchen erupted in joy. Terrence jumped up shouting, Lena laughed loudly, and even Carl raised a glass in toast. Standing alone later, Marcus reflected on his journey, from a boy in Vermont learning about respect for animals to facing down one of Washington's most intimidating figures. He had risked everything for his principles, and won not through compromise, but through excellence. In Washington's power corridors, where expedience usually triumphs over ethics, Marcus Elwood had proven that principles need not be sacrificed at the altar of success. Sometimes, standing firm doesn't just preserve your integrity, it produces better results. The story of Marcus Elwood and Karoline Leavitt reminds us that in a world obsessed with image, substance still matters. In American politics, where compromise often feels inevitable, there remains space for those who refuse to bend on core beliefs. What principles would you never compromise, even if your job depended on it? Tag someone who stands by their principles no matter what, and subscribe to Karoline now for more stories about the collision of power, principle, and politics in America. In the end, Marcus didn't just serve a meal. He served a reminder that leadership isn't about wielding power, but about using it wisely. And sometimes, the most powerful move is simply refusing to play by rules that violate your core beliefs. This is Karoline now, bringing you the stories that reveal America's character one confrontation at a time. Until our next encounter with power and principle, remember, in a world of political expediency, moral courage remains the most potent force of all.